Hello, I'm Cynthia Rosnoy, curator at the Mattituck Museum. I welcome you to In the Studio, today the second of a three-part series. It will provide you with a behind-the-scenes workplace tour. This is of Duvian Montoya. To an outside observer, the creation of a work of art may seem a work of magic. The artist dreams up a concept, and then, as if from the pure ether, creates an aesthetic, tangible object. But while that artwork may seem effortless when seen in its finished form, it is in fact the product of trial and error, honed skills, experience, and in many cases, physical exertion, all taking place in this laboratory that is the artist's studio. Today's In the Artist Zoom meeting, we visit Duvian Montoya's Easton, Connecticut studio. We'll learn about his artistic process and see works created over a span of years. Along with us is Mattituck Director Bob Burns, our Development Director Cindy Tolosa, the Zoom Master, is the moderator, and we extend special thanks to Emma Montoya, who is behind the camera. Duvian's art is a socially conscious one. It addresses the news and issues of today's political and cultural reality. His style, unique and beautiful, has moved from an intensely stylized technique to one that has an increased focus on detailed imagery. Alert to both life's joys and menaces, he explores the way we live our lives today. Duvian is a busy, celebrated artist with many successful shows under his belt, including the fabulous audience pleaser at the Mattituck in 2016. You may, in fact, recall seeing this painting, which graces the cover of our current quarterly brochure, at that time. Duvian, thank you for sharing your studio with us today. So good to see you again.
Good to see you guys too, and thanks for having me a part of this series.
So why don't you tell us first just about the physical space? Is your studio away from your home? Tell us about the space.
Yeah, one thing, thanks again for letting me be a part of this, and to Bob as well. But I also want to just say thanks to my wife for being the camera person behind right now. So thank you. And with the studio space, the studio is actually a detached garage that that I converted when we first moved into the house about 10 years ago to this year. No, 9 years ago this year. So it was a space that we were trying to look for. It was a property that we were looking for back then, where I could bring the studio to home and not have a commute in between. So I was we were lucky enough to find this house in the hills of Easton. So, and I have this great big garage door that's all glass in front. It's sort of on the back side of the camera. So maybe at the end I could turn you guys around and you could see sort of the space.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see that. But you know, what intrigues me right away is over your shoulder, I see the painting of a worker, which is from that early series, similar to the one that I just showed on our brochure. Could we start talking about that painting there?
Yeah, so actually our farmer's piece right here was actually part in that show. And it's one of the last pieces I have of that series, which I called our worker series. And it started back in 2006 when I felt that immigrants were being sort of downplayed in our economy and sort of being the villains in our society. And so being a child of immigrants, I felt like I needed to give more prominence to the story of the immigrant and how they come here to this country to work hard, to make a success out of themselves, and to build a lifestyle that they probably wouldn't be able to achieve in their own home country. So in 2006, I started the series, and I still dabble in the series occasionally. With this piece, this is a newer piece that I've been working on for about a year now. You know, I'll work on it. I'll have, because I work a lot from references, from photos, and so I'll find a reference I feel like that would work perfect for the idea that I want, and then I add it to the piece. And so that's why the pieces sometimes take a little bit longer to develop.
I like seeing this comparison because even though the theme is the same, the style is very different. It shows how you've moved. Is this a matter of several years between these two works?
It's definitely a matter of years in between. In 2006, my work was very stylistic, very driven by the line, and allowing the line work to be a prominent part of the piece. It's something that I wanted, was my own sort of personal style per se, or I tried to find, and I felt most comfortable doing and painting like this. To me, is very natural. And I still paint this way, but my color choices are so blended now that you don't really see that movement that you see in sort of the paintings back in 2006. So now, because my color palette is a little bit more integrated, you really don't see that movement within the work anymore. But to me, I still paint the same. It's just the color interchanges a lot easy.
Right. I can see that, and how the line has changed. There's still a lot of energy there, and that, while we're still at this theme, I'd like to just ask you a little bit about your work with other artists, because you were actually a curator for an exhibition at the Matitech Museum, where you brought in other artists. And one of the things our audience might not know about you is the great effort you put into supporting other artists, into collaborating with other artists. I know two things you might talk about is your work that one of the first times I saw you was at St. Philip's Church in Norwalk. Yeah. And now still you remain active with the Westport Arts Alliance that you co-founded.
Yeah, the Westport Arts Collective. To me, to succeed, I think in the art world, you need a community to help your career, but to develop a community to stand on. We all need each other to sort of hold the floor for each other, to hold us up high, because without a community, you don't have that group effort to have a cultural roots within the community. And I felt like I needed to develop that, or help that to take place here in Fairfield County. I also did that when I lived down in New Mexico, where I had a gallery out there, thanks to Keely Whittington, that I was able to showcase almost 100 artists in 2 years of having the gallery in existence. So to me, community of artists is such a huge part of my life, because one, I like that exchange between other artists, but also it takes that community of artists to really make a movement, or an event out of the arts.
Right. So that kind of community and collaboration is an extension of your social commentary, what you do. Is that continuing in works as we move along the gallery here in your studio?
Yeah, the work is always evolving and changing with what's going on in the world around us. Sorry, let me just fix this. So with this series here, I called Created Pages, really deals with the social bubbles that we create on social media. So I started this back in 2014, where I felt like we create these imagery on our social pages of sort of the beautiful settings in which we live, where we travel to, the food we eat, the opinions, and we create these bubbles that are almost two-dimensional. It doesn't really have a sense of who we are. It gives a sense of what we're up to and sort of what we're doing, but it doesn't really give a sense of who we are on that three-dimensional space. So that's why with this work, I created sort of interior shots of people's homes and labeled it almost like a catalog page where things are for sale in a catalog page, but also with the figures I left very two-dimensional, very flat, and anything of natural element was also whited out or flattened out to eliminate sort of the dimensionality of nature.
I see that, particularly when you talk about catalog pages, it has a gloss about it, kind of a finished glossy page that the catalog would.
Yeah.
And yes, the whited out screen makes you think about how we almost get lost behind our screens too. Are there others in that series?
Yeah, there's about 4 large paintings, and about 9 or 10 drawings. And what I tend to do with this series was create a graphite drawing like this. Piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I go and do a watercolor.
For the colors.
The colors, and each piece is a little altered, a little changed, and then from there I would do the painting. Well, and that came about working with Bob Cottingham and how he develops his compositions with his large canvases in those same steps. So I've been working with Bob Cottingham for the last 6 years. And so that was, I could see that influence coming into my life. And I love that because one, it allowed me to resolve any problems with the composition and the preliminary drawings, but also allowed people to sort of buy into my work at different scales as well. From the drawing, the watercolor, and the large painting.
Yes, Duvian, may I ask, am I seeing those correctly? Are they shaped canvases? Are the corners rounded on those canvases?
Yeah. So they are rounded canvases, and the idea was it's like an app on your phone where all the apps are that rounded square format. So again, it's also dealing with that social media commentary as well.
And you're so prescient because that's what, in the painting on the left, that's like 99% of America right this moment in their homes, on their computers, watching us talk to you.
Yeah, and it's this double-edged sword that I dealt with social media and that concern of, is it the right way of living? Is it just keeping us busy and not focused on other things? So it's sort of this effort in my own mind of trying to figure out whether or not, if it's good or bad for society.
And can we look at the painting that the preliminary works were for? Because again, you're using that technique of whiting out the people, whiting out the canvas behind him.
Right. Let me bring you in closer to this.
Okay, yep.
And
so now, this is part of a series where you visited your friends, other people in their homes?
Yeah, they're essentially friends and their homes that they've curated with their own taste and objects of desire, I guess. And then this piece also, if you read the letter from left to right, it also says, spells out curated.
Perfect.
So it's another sort of little thing to sort of match up for the painting.
Curated became the it word about 2 years ago. Now you have, everything is curated.
Yeah.
But I would say I really like this element of whiting out those key pieces because it makes you and it's your commentary also. It's not just social commentary, it's how you're feeling, I think, at the time about how social media was impacting.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that two-dimensionality that we get of each other, because we can't, through the screen, you don't get a sense of who we really are. You don't get the emotional impact of who we are. The stresses, we're always posting all the beautiful things that are happening in our life, but when it comes to, you know, the sadness or the stresses or the problems in our life, we're not posting those things. So now I think we're starting to see that it's starting to change. And I, with the new series I'm creating now, you'll be able to see sort of my coming to terms with social media.
But before you come to that, you go through a period, do you, where you're looking at, as a contrast to this, more meditative practices?
Yeah.
Does any of your work show us that?
Yeah, so the new work, or the newer work pre-corona, I was dealing with our quiet practices, our practice of quieting the mind, shutting off social media, and really just being with yourself. So I was again going into people's homes and photographing them in that sort of spiritual moment. And I started with my father's piece here because I've always felt that he had this beautiful faith in his religion, and I've always admired that because he's someone that practiced prayer for 5 times a day, for 30 minutes at a time. And then from my father's piece, I did a painting of Robert Cottingham.
Yes, I recognize him. Yeah, with the sign that he's painting.
Yeah.
What strikes me is how, when you talk about meditative practice and we talk about your father painting, is how the shapes of the paintings replicate church windows. Is that purposeful?
Absolutely. It was, I spent 8 months in Europe, living in London for some time, and they have some of the most beautiful religious artwork in their museums because they've had so many centuries of I don't want to say plunder, but
but moved, borrowed. Yeah,
I think plunder's probably right.
So, I was just in awe of all this religious work, and a lot of it dealt with these beautiful shapes, and once I started playing with those shapes, it really spoke to me, and I was able to develop this series using those shapes.
And Duvian, do you subscribe to a particular meditative practice? What do you do to calm and be serene?
Sure. I think just like Bob, painting to me is that quieting of the mind at certain times. Because when you're developing a piece or developing the painting, you're engaged with it. You're developing it. You're constantly thinking about what to do next. But when you're painting, I get lost in that whole process of mixing the color and trying to blend them together appropriately and what's going to work. I definitely allow my brain to shut off and let it be more intuitive. And another way for me too is going for a hike, being in nature. Yeah.
And that kind of, I'm sorry, the phone rang, real life. That kind of shaped canvas and talking about architecture reminds me that you also put some energy into what I would say architectural themes in some of this more recent work.
Yeah.
Here we are. Yep.
And then this was a piece also part of the spiritual
that's
practice.
Fabulous. Can you tell us about this piece? It's just fabulous.
Yeah, so this was going to go along with that same series of That's probably good there. With that work, I was thinking of our own spiritual practices and trying to capture as many different spiritual practices out there. But also, I want to start creating new icons. And with this one, I started with, I wanted to bring sort of all the religions into one painting. And so with this, I was able to bring a lot of the symbolism of Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and even science with the child holding the rocket.
Oh, I see that. Can you identify what the elements are of the different religions there?
Sure. So yeah, you get the crescent moon from Islam, the Judaic star, the sacred cow in Hinduism, the lotus from Buddhism, the lamb from Christianity. Again, the rocket, sort of my symbol for science. And then the calla lily is a symbol of peace, and also the dove as well. And also bringing together black and white in the same painting. And I'm still working, this is still a work in progress. And I'm trying to do north and south, and using the two different landscapes of the cold and sort of the warmer.
Oh, I see that. And yet I'm surprised to hear that it's still a work in progress, because it seems so finished and so stunningly beautiful.
Well,
how long does it take for you to typically produce a painting?
This piece has been on the easel for about a year and a half. And again, there are elements that I'm constantly adding to and trying to figure out what's going to work well. And then with this, my toughest part has been the child, and the child still isn't done. So I'm waiting for a reference or the right child that I tend to photograph myself.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you use models? Is that woman a model, the child a model?
Yeah, this is Mascarum, which is a good friend of mine's wife. And I was able to find, I was going through photographs, and I saw the picture of her, and it reminded me a lot of the girl with the pearl earring.
The Vermeer, right.
Yeah, Vermeer. And that sort of, I think her face sparked this idea of creating the icons, because I did find a sense of beauty and sacredness within that sort of photo.
Sure.
Duvian, I have a two-part question. One is, one of our audience members wants to ask something I also want to ask. How many hours a day do you work? And then my second part is, does it take a while to work on a particular piece because you're going away to work on other things, or are you like just waiting for inspiration to come back to that work?
Yeah, ideally, my life has changed when the kids came along. and so they have taken up a lot of time. So my schedule in the studio was the time when they're at school now. So it was a good chunk of time, but now with homeschooling, it's totally, that's that whole time frame up. So now it's a lot of an hour here, half hour there, 2 hours there. I'm working a lot at night now. But when I had that solid time with the kids at school, I was able to do a lot of these pieces. And ideally, when I'm doing oil painting specifically, I like to have at least 8 hours of solid studio time, because I'm mixing paint. I want to work wet into wet, and I don't want to spend an hour mixing paint and then come back another day and it's dried up. So I have to pick and choose what pieces I'm working on based on the time. And that's why nowadays I'm working a lot with oil, watercolor and gouaches.
Quicker process.
Quicker process. It's easy to stop and start with.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a big contrast just between what we see on the screen right now, and that is this great emphasis on the figure and the beautiful woman, but then we come to something that's totally architectural now. I mean, there's a person there, I think, or something by the door, but it's really about the building here.
Yeah, yeah. This came about because I needed to quiet my political work because there was so much to talk about. And I felt like I couldn't talk about everything that kept on coming out, especially since 2016. So in a way, I need to find something that I would just be happy doing so I could quiet that noise down. And so I started going through a lot of the trips that I've been lucky enough to go on with my wife, sort of like to Mexico, to Morocco, to England, and all these beautiful places that I've always loved. But before I became an artist, I wanted to be an architect. And I got scared away from architecture because of the rigidness of it, the preciseness of it. And so I find it interesting looking now that I've gone back to sort of architecture and the love of architecture with these paintings. And also the influence of Robert Cunningham, you can see again in these works.
That reminds me too, though, of I think it's at the South Norwalk train station, how you've done murals, public murals also. Is that where I've seen it? It's people walking?
Yeah, that what I did that in 2012. And that was one of my first big projects, mural projects. And from then on, I've been doing a mural maybe about once a year now, which I love to do. I love to be able to go out into the public, try to figure out a narrative story to tell about the community in which the piece is going to be in.
I feel like a recent one had like dolphins and rainbows or something like that, right?
Yeah. I just did one for the Sono collection, which is the new mall that was built in Norwalk.
Yeah.
And that was very playful for me because they wanted something sort of uplifting. And when my kids were born, I did these mobiles of animals of all different colors and, shapes and stuff. So I presented them this idea of like, if you want something uplifting, here's what I have. Because they actually wanted to do a mural of this type of architectural stuff. I was like, that'll be too hard to do in a mural because it's the detail, the time, it would take a lot. And I only had 5 days to do it.
Wow.
So the idea of the animals came to me and I presented it and they loved it. So I ended up doing this whale with tiger stripes and these really rainbow colored pelicans. And it was I always loved doing big projects like that.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And when you do those projects, are you working alone? Do you ever have assistants to help you?
For the Sono project I did, for the train station, because that was 9 months of solid work. And then to install, because they were cut out of high density fiberboard and then painted here in the studio and then installed in the tunnel. And that way I didn't have to be in that tunnel for that long, creating these figures of all different decades since the train station was built, and I think it was 1860. I picked one sort of fashion that was walking through the tunnel. So it was, a lot of different fashionable moments of the past century and a half.
Yeah, fabulous. And Are there others of this architectural series we can see, or should? Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up the camera. I think it'd be easier doing it this way.
Okay. Oh, here's some.
So yeah, this one is Florida. This is Mexico. This one is from Morocco. England. This also is from England.
The one of Florida, you really capture that white summertime light. That's so hot there.
Thank you.
But that's just fabulous how you use the light like that. And that's really one of your strengths, is the color, how you can use that to really demonstrate feelings about the place.
Yeah,
also,
you.
what that shows us is the variety of scale in your works. You work from small to large.
Yeah. I've always loved working large, and something that I would love to do more of, but with kids, it's sort of, I've had to adjust with the family life. And I'm doing these smaller works in the idea of creating them large scale. So if something hits me right, I do think I could exchange this into the larger scale, especially with some of these really quick reference pieces that I could see as murals.
Oh, so these are works in process, these birds?
Yeah. I was doing these right before Corona, really. And just something playful, colorful, in the hopes of doing more murals.
Well, tell me, how has Corona affected your life, this quarantine life? Has it impacted how you work, what you're producing?
Yeah, definitely. So with this, since Corona being in lockdown, it really has affected sort of our relationships and our sense of being with family and friends, and I really miss that. I really miss the integration with our neighbors, hugging them, giving everybody a big hug. I'm a hugger. So it's been really hard going to my parents' house and having this socially distant visit. So I had to come up with a new way of trying to connect with people. And because of that, I've actually come full circle with social media and the internet, and how it's sort of our saving grace at this moment in life. And because of that, it's allowed us to reach out and touch people. And that's why with this piece here, I've actually sort of was inspired by going to press the on button on my phone.
But now, don't we recognize those people? Maybe our viewers don't, but that's a family portrait, right?
It's a beautiful family.
Yes.
It is.
I love this hand reaching out. That's what, reaching out to envelop the rest of your world sometime in the future?
Yeah, it's actually now part of this larger project that I'm trying to develop as this quarantine still continues, of people reaching out. And so I'm asking people to come and almost do a selfie of themselves, so I could in turn do portraits of them, so I could connect with them, and hopefully they could connect with me by doing, because for me, doing a portrait, I'm consumed with that face and that figure. I'm thinking about their life. I'm thinking about the kids and how much I miss them, and all that sort of love and affection I'm trying to put into these portraits. And so on social media, I've actually ask people to submit photos for me to connect with, and it's either family, friends, or even complete strangers, because I do miss having those conversations with strangers. And you know,
When I saw it on your Facebook page the first time, I thought of the Sistine Chapel, and like you were one half of the two fingers coming together,
Yeah.
and you were reaching out there for the other hand.
I didn't want
But
to
you
go
know,
there.
you're right. Yeah, yeah.
So it's funny you say that, because at first I had clouds down here. So oh man, I might be thinking of myself as God.
But you know, a painter or an artist is a creator, is the creator of those works. So it's okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. It was for me hard to swallow that I'm painting myself as God. So instead, I put myself sort of on the ground, surrounded by the apple trees.
Yeah, yeah. And the one on the left, is that a portrait of your folks?
Yeah, this is a painting of my parents here that I still working on. And this was one of my recent visits to their place, and I had to start with them, because they're the hardest ones to not be able to squeeze.
And I like how your mother's hand is reaching out. I guess, will that reach be part of the series? Will that be something that you, as a consistent element throughout the series, do you think?
Yeah, so that in the sort of the ask in my post on social media was for you to be reaching out. So that hand will be an intricate part of the series, because we're all sort of reaching out. Because it's not just me that's suffering with this issue of distance. I think a lot of people are, and we don't know how it's gonna cause a lot of depression in the world, because of we're meant to be socially active. We're meant to be engaged with others.
Right. But you even identified this at the start of the conversation, and this demonstrates how you've come full circle about your feelings. When we talk about social media, those early pieces were sort of like, I'm not sure I want to be there, and now these, because of the pandemic, are making you kind of embrace the use of social media.
Yeah, I'm the first one to say, I was a real skeptic of social media and how busy we kept ourselves on social media. And I think when you're a small business or an artist, you need social media to promote your work and to sell it and to get out there in front of people. But I didn't really like that two-dimensional world in which we were existing. So, but with this, to me, it's flipped it. That it's, to me, FaceTime or the phone now is more intimate than going to my family and trying not to hug them.
Right.
So it's really flipped it on itself, and it is what it is, and we have to accept it for now.
Well, I think your art and how you describe it, how you describe what you do and who you are, comes through in the paintings. When you talk about being a hugger, we can see that kind of warmth of personality in your art and in your themes. Your socially conscious work is just perfect for helping us explore what's going on in today's world. I wonder if we have any questions for Duvian that we should bring up now.
So if our attendees want to ask questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can just click on that icon and type your question into us. I already asked the first one.
And I would ask just one more question while we just wait and see if people, if we've answered all their questions or not. And that is, Duvian, this is like a sucker punch in that I haven't prepared you all for this kind of question. So let's say it's after the pandemic is over, we can welcome everybody into our houses. Are there any artists that we might know, what famous artist might you invite to come to your house?
Alive or dead, or?
Anyone. They could come to life.
Pick one of each.
Just because I work with Robert Cottingham,
Uh-huh.
I love the man. He's a gentle, humble soul. I love the work. I love his color.
Uh-huh.
And, just to have him back into my life again would be great.
Uh-huh.
But, I've always been a big fan of Hopper, that
Oh,
sense of light.
when I just think of that Florida painting you just showed us.
Exactly.
Wow.
And with that piece, I was actually studying a lot of Hopper, and I was looking through a lot of his books at that time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really influenced that work and a lot of the architectural work.
I can see that there. Yeah. Yeah.
And Van Gogh, it might be, I don't know, a drunken mess if he was.
So Bob,
Really
I think
depends
we're
on what
invited.
era of
We're
Van Gogh that
invited.
you're meeting with.
Well, this has just been such a wonderful tour. Duvian, you've been so kind to let us into your studio.
I do have a question here, Cynthia.
Oh,
Would you like me to ask it?
Yeah.
So one of our good friends, Lynn Franklin Henry, has asked oil or watercolor, paper or canvas, underpaintings, medium. What are your preferences?
I'm in the era of watercolor and gouaches. I actually just told my wife the other day, is like, I might give up oil painting because I love the gouache right now. I love the fluidity of it. I love being able to stop and start. And I'll use acrylics for the larger work, but oil paints for me have been, something I've always loved, but I've had to let go a little bit because of the family life, but also the toxicity of it as well.
Right.
And when it comes to underpainting, my process is very similar in gouache than it is in oils. I still do underpaintings, very monochromatic underpaintings. If you look at my social media feed, you could see sort of how some of these works are developed, and from the sketch to the underpainting to the end result.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, gouache.
Okay. So we could refer people to your website so they could see some of those works as they progressed. I know there's one particularly beautiful painting that people can find under your landscape section. It's titled England, and it's a cloud study.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just stunning. It's sort of Hopper meets Constable, but it's totally just you. It's just a beautiful painting, and I thought unexpected when I saw it. Yeah,
Right,
just
right.
beautiful.
Yeah, landscapes. I did it when I lived down in New Mexico. I did landscapes all the time, and I just got tired of doing landscapes. And then occasionally, I still will do a landscape here and there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, just trying to capture it. I find it difficult capturing nature in what I want to capture. So maybe I'm a little afraid of trying to capture it. Maybe, I don't know what it is, but I in New Mexico, that sense of grandness, I always wanted to capture. I never felt like I was able to, but then again, I don't have any landscapes left. That's probably one of the biggest sellers for me.
See that?
So when you're able to travel again, where is the first place you'd like to go?
Oh, wow. I love Spain. And I would love to go to Colombia. It's been a while since I went. I haven't been there with the kids and my wife. So I would love to take them there and show them sort of the Colombian culture, lifestyle, how warm and welcoming people are, and the beauty of the landscape there. And I love to do the architecturals. I always dreamt of doing sort of an architectural series of Columbia as well there. So who knows when that's going to be, though? Hopefully not too long.
Right.
Well, the ticket would be cheap right now. It's just whether or not you get to go would be the
Yeah, or get stuck in quarantine for.
Oh, dear.
Well,
Well,
I
looking
don't think we have
forward.
any more questions from our audience. But,
Can I show you a couple other little
of
projects?
course.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, and we actually do have one more question before we sign off.
Okay.
We see you studied jewelry making. Are you still making jewelry?
Ah,
No, I never had the equipment after school. I never had the equipment at home. So it's something that I would love to get back into because of that sculptural element. Because and I just love working with my hands. I'm doing a lot with wood. You know, I'm always, you know, shaping my canvases, and I love that process. So I probably would never go back into jewelry design because of the tools.
Mm.
And it's a whole new medium that I have to get proficient at before going out there again. And I need time for this stuff.
so show us a few little things.
Yeah, so this is some other pieces I've been working on since quarantine life.
Oh, breathe, sort of centering yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, this reminds me that there is on the museum's website weekly changes for social media on social media for people to access programs for adults, for children. And I know that there's a program using that image behind you.
Right.
To your left. Can you describe that? I think it was an acorn. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it's sort of the life cycle of the acorn.
Hmm.
And when quarantine happened, I was really getting cues from nature and in that cycle of life, and how, you know, it's constantly changing format. And we were living in this great economy and this, you know, really way of life that we didn't expect any change to happen. And then this happened, and then, you know, everything has been adjusting since then. And I felt like the acorn was a good representation of that, of sort of the dropping of the acorn from the tree to the, you know, embedding itself into the ground of rest time, and then the spring of explosion of life again. And that's what I'm hoping for all of us, is that after we get out of here, we're going to have a whole new world to get out there and enjoy.
That's a lovely metaphor and a lovely hope of expression for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Duvian, for inviting us into your studio.
It's been a pleasure. We really enjoyed seeing how you work and where you work. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks again for letting me be a part of this. And it's always a joy talking to you guys. Thank you.
A big hug.